Bam.
This is Donald Dunn, and you are watching the Break It Down show.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I love it. It's the second show today. And I'm hoping that you can tell me a little bit about your show. I was on yours, Spirits and Stories, but talk a little bit about that, and then we'll pick it up from there.
Okay. So my show has been around for about 4 years. When it originally started, it was a Facebook Live called Two Drunk Dudes in a Gun Room. And the object was just for us to relate back to the soldiers that we served with. It wasn't a podcast. It wasn't anything. It was just us trying to reach out. We had a couple soldiers that had committed suicide, and that's where it started. And by the end, it had grown so much, we turned it into a podcast. So the purpose of it, as we changed the name to Spirits and Stories with Donald Dunn, my co-host dropped off. So I changed the name after starting a nonprofit to something a little bit more professional. And the objective is just to get everybody to tell their story and document it for the world to know. We all have a story, and I discovered therapy through podcasting, and I know how important it is to tell your story. And so I kept us going. We're in season 4, episode right at 300, somewhere around there. And we are, I love it, man. I do it full time. So I wouldn't change it for the world.
You can't change it, because once you get over the hump, like we have with these shows, it's, you realize the value in what you're doing, or you start to realize the value, and then you start to trade the value, and then you start to say, hey, I'm going to give you this value, and then all of a sudden there's value moving everywhere, and it's on us to figure out how to turn that into something sustainable. But I think the key here is that realizing that these stories matter. There's a lot of people that want to hear about them, and there's a lot of people that want to talk about whatever it is. And you're talking about, stories of service, but there's a lot of different stories. There's stories of redemption. There's all kinds of things that we can get into and talk about on these shows.
Yeah, I've had some really remarkable guests. I've had, the show's grown so much, it's not even just military anymore. I had Mike Tyson and Dennis Rodman's personal security guard on my show.
Yeah.
I've had Mr. Campbell. I can't remember off the hand his first name, but I had him on my show. He was one of 2 football players for Army to get actually into the NFL. He played for Detroit. Remarkable story.
Yeah.
Yep. I've had some really, really cool guests, man. And like I said, everybody has a story. There's trauma victims out there that never served, but are going through the same thing that veterans are going through. There's people that just have amazing family members. I had another guest on that his ancestor, it was one of his great grandfathers, was in World War II, I believe it was. Yeah, World War II. And he fought for 4 different countries, not 4 different services, 4 different countries. He got drafted out of Romania, then Romania got taken over. He fought for the country that took them over. I can't remember who it was. Then he got captured by the Germans, and then he got captured by the Russians, and then the Russians needed people, so they offered freedom in exchange for service, and so he became a sniper for the Russians. And then after the war, he walked 1,600 miles home. So, amazing stories, man, that people have out there.
For anybody watching, just go to donalddunn.me. The podcasts are there. There's books. There's all kinds of stuff. Where else do you want people to go so they can kind of go check you out right now while we're chatting?
So that's the main spot that you'll find me.
Okay.
The other spot is Veteran Voice Radio. That's our nonprofit, veteranvoiceradio.com. And you can find all about our music and our radio stations and everything there as well.
That's great. I'm going to put that link in here, everybody. It'll be in the remarks as well. When you when we're trying to figure this impossible thing of, look at the work that you did, right? For example, you do these incredible things. You're in charge of all this money, all this responsibility in a life and death situation. You're leading people, because the military, while it's fighting a war, it's also mentoring the next step, and they're saying, hey, here's how you get it. And then you get out, And like I was doing some really cool stuff last year. It'd be great to just kind of keep doing cool stuff. And I don't know about you, but I couldn't even get an interview for a job,
Yeah.
and that broke my heart. I was like, I've really done some incredible things. I really can help. I'd love to help, and I was useless. Nobody had a use for me, and it made me want to die.
Yeah. I was in that same boat. Believe it or not, I did a piss poor job, uh, even setting myself up to go down that route. I was
Mhm.
planning on committing suicide when I got out, and once I could figure out insurance and everything and get my family stable. I was planning on exiting stage left, and
Mhm.
you know, my plans got changed after my wife discovered what I was about to do, and um, it forced me to have to figure out a job and everything else. And I was in that same boat, man. I picked a great place to retire, just a shitty place to work. And
Mhm.
so I created a business, man. I opened up a trucking company, and I did that for 6 years. Um, not out of the desire to be a trucker, but out of what was available and had the opportunity to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that resonates. First off, I know a 18 Alpha that bought a truck. He's like, I'm just going to drive this thing because that's what I'm allowed to do. And you and I know 18 Alpha, that means something. That's someone who's highly qualified. They've
Yeah.
done a lot of incredible things, and they've impressed a lot of incredible people. And that dude couldn't get a regular job. Now, granted, look, in some ways, um, a guy like me, I'm hard to manage because I don't need their help. I don't need
Yeah.
their job. I can find another shitty job, right? And so it is a little bit hard in some cases, but yeah, I couldn't even get an interview though,
Yeah.
or if I did, it was a favor to a friend, and one guy said, "I can't afford you," and I'm like, because I was so credentialed, and I'm like, "Well, you didn't even ask me what I want." And he's like, "There's no way you'll stay. I don't care what you want. I know you're not going to stay. You're going to go find something else that makes you more money. And I can't afford to have you leave that fast." And then he said to me, "Why don't you go back to Afghanistan?" And he meant well, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, "But I'd like to just live my life here like you do. And if that costs me something," I didn't say all these things. I just said, I appreciate it because it wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to try to talk him into a job that, frankly, I probably didn't want anyhow. But
Yeah.
and you can, and this is just you and I talking, right? Like you bring 10 of us in the room, the same story over and over again.
Yep. Well, I think where I was disappointed the most came much later. It came.
Mm,
I did eventually close my company, and I did find a job with a mining company here in Missouri,
okay.
and I did that for 3 or 4 years. And again, I was trying to picture. I don't know what I was trying to picture. I thought that it would be different, but what I discovered about all these manufacturing jobs, right? I was in the maintenance field, so that was the demand right there, was doing maintenance in these factories. And every single management person, they always seem to have a book wrote by a Navy SEAL, right?
Yeah.
And they want to
Yeah.
talk about leadership, and they
Hmm.
read these books to learn about leadership, because it's no secret. I can't speak about the other branches, but the Army is probably got the best education for leadership. I mean, they literally spend billions of dollars on schools to teach you how to lead. And
Yeah.
they're putting life and death decisions on you. We're not making widgets, we're trying to keep people alive. And when you try to change that into what these corporations want leadership to be, there isn't they can't get it, because you're not leadership isn't just about making somebody make widgets. It's about knowing what they need to take care of them and helping them grow, and helping them take, like you said before, take your job eventually, and make them great leaders as well. Who gives a shit about widgets? And at the end of the day, man, that's where I discovered that, in the civilian world, it seems like they take the word leadership as in, I was able to get guys to make our quota, and that makes me a great leader,
Right.
but they don't even know everybody's name.
Yeah. And they don't realize that half those guys are on the edge of financial ruin
Yep.
and no idea what they're going to be doing in 3 months, but would never speak up about it because they don't trust the soul above
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Ugh. Yeah. And if we can't find jobs, part of that is because there are so many robots helping people find jobs. Nobody can find jobs. And so
Yeah.
you hear all these stories of 10,000 people applied for this job. And you're like, well, how do you sort that out? How can there be so many people looking for so many jobs, so many companies saying we're desperate for somebody to come do this job, and no, and there's so much. If these things are true, the belief is that there's a lot of underemployment where people are just taking any kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm told that we're supposed to believe in a career concept, and it's like, well, nobody believes in me. No one talks to me. So again, that puts you on the dark side of things because professionally, if you want to go in the traditional route, it's not available to you. It's not available to
Yeah.
me. And now we have to go out and invent something else. And I'm going to be a pirate. You don't leave it up to me. I'm going to be a pirate. I'm going to go do what I have to do when I have to do it. I'm not going to purposely harm anybody, but also I'm going to be a pirate. I'm just going to do it. That's
Yeah.
because that's the life we lived. And I wasn't allowed to become something different. And so I am a wild horse. I will do what I want to do. You're not going to tell me that, you know, I had a job when I first got out of the military. I got a job working at a computer sales kind of place, and it's big national level brand. And I was doing everything they said to do. I was on the phones. I was talking to people. I was closing business, but they always ratchet up the goal, ratchet up the goal, ratchet up the goal.
Yep.
And it was like, well, there's no sense in that. I understand you want to apply pressure, but like, we're in a government setting. There's seasons for buying, and my goal goes up no matter what. And then you start to look bad at me for not performing, but they didn't invest any time. They always said in the beginning, "Oh, we're going to sit down with you. We're going to make sure you understand how to do it." They didn't do that. Just get on the goddamn phones. Well, if it's just get on the goddamn phones, that's not a problem. And so they started to look a little cross at me because I'd be on the phones doing what I'm supposed to do, selling things, just not as much as somebody else. Hadn't caught a break, or I wouldn't be given a break to catch a lot of times. And it got worse and worse and worse. And finally, my boss called me one day. He's like, "I don't know how to motivate you." This goes to your leadership thing. "I don't know how to motivate you." And I said, "Well, Tony, you have a job that I can replace. You guys don't care about my long-term future. Every time I've come up with an idea or tried to find some way to work into another position here, I get shoulder shoved. So, I understand what's going on here. I have to make money. By the way, I can add, I make enough money. All the gravy, not talking about like there's gravy above the gravy, but just the gravy.
Yep.
It pays for me. It pays for everybody in my little 4-man section, and it pays for 2 ladies down in accounting. So don't tell me I'm not valuable to this company, where I'm sitting at."
Yep.
And he realized that he couldn't lead me because he was behind me. And they had their knives out. And I'm like, "I know what you guys are doing back there. If you guys wanted me to be something and go somewhere, you would act like it. Because I've been on teams that work well. I've been on teams that work bad. This is not the good kind of team."
Yeah. Yeah. In the civilian world, they think that leadership is about doing what's best for the company, right? But what they don't realize is you got to put your troops ahead of anything, right?
Yeah.
The only thing that is dictative is the mission, right? You take your mission, the next thing comes is your troops.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you have to choose between your troops and the mission, then the mission will get aborted and it'll get refigured out and done in a safer or a more strategic level.
Right.
It's not that way in the civilian world. In the civilian world, the company is the top, and they think if I do what's best for the company, regardless of what it does to the workforce, then I'm a great leader. But no, that just makes you a great employee. It just makes you, tied to that company. And I get it. The company has to make money, and you have to have people that are going to do the right thing. But we're talking about leadership. You can't confuse the two things. You can be a great entrepreneur or CEO or manager and still be a shitty leader.
Yeah.
Those things do exist.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to be hard on every corporation in the world either. A lot of corporations do a pretty good job of integrating, but their palette for how many veteran type people they can use is limited, like any company.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to do their best. They're not trying to get people killed, but the result is that it's hard to find jobs. I know so many people right now that are looking for jobs, and they're like, "I can't get a job. I will do anything." and they
Yeah.
can't reliably find a job. And I have a buddy, he passed away last year, but he got stuck like that. And he's like, I don't know what to do, because I go and I apply for places like Home Depot, and they look at me and they look at my credentials and they go, you're not going to work here. He was overqualified. They knew it. He knew it.
Yeah.
And he could dumb down his resume, but what's that say about both parties involved? Like, you can't use me here on the floor at Home Depot, but if I tell you I don't have any credentials and everything else, well, then why aren't you hiring people with credentials? What happened? And so why would you sacrifice your experience, your hard-won experience? And then once they find out, they're not going to be like, hey, you got to go. They're going to keep you there, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to find something for you to do, maybe. But instead, and I was told a bunch of times, I don't know about you, Don, but I was told a bunch of times to take my military stuff out of my resume, because I lived in California, and they at best wouldn't understand it, and at worst they would hold it against me.
Yeah. I've gave that exact advice to a lot of people that were in the National Guard and Reserves. I said, you put that on that resume, and the first thing that person sees is there is now 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year that I have to keep you on my books, but I can't get any work out of you.
Right.
And if we should you get deployed, now I got to keep you on my books for over a year. I have to replace you and keep you on my books, which increases my manning and everything else. And so,
right.
Yeah, I can see that thought process of, by you want to get hired, take off the military.
Yeah. Is it inevitable that veterans are just going to struggle? Because we also don't know what we want to do. We have a dream of what we might want to do, but it's fair to say that we're likely to change jobs several times before we find something that we get settled into.
Well, you think about this, and this is the bad part, and this is where the military fails. You take the technology from the military or the Army. I'm not going to speak about the Navy or Marines, but in the Army, we're easily 20 years behind in technology from our counterparts. And then when you go to get out of the military, the I'm here for a check GS workers doesn't really teach you anything about what's going on in the civilian world. They don't even know,
right.
because they're collecting that government check as well. And so when you get out, you're basing what you want to do on this, the grass is greener on the other side, and I'm going to do all
right.
this cool shit. It's kind of like when I went to the recruiter and I got told I'm going to be doing engine rebuilds and all this really cool shit. And we don't,
No,
not even close. And so
no.
you get in the civilian world, and now I've got these expectations. I'm going to, I was a mechanic, so I'm looking at these diesel shops that I'm going to go get hired at, and I'm going to drop from, 60,000 a year to 40,000 a year, because they're going to start me out as the oil change guy.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
here I am. I got 20 years of experience. That doesn't count for shit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Boy, oh boy, especially in the union shop, right? They'll be like, oh, you're new here.
Yeah.
One of the times I tried not to be a warrior, I lived in Vegas, and I got a job at their chlorine plant there. And I got hired with a bunch of other guys. I got hired, like 4 or 5 of us, and we had to do the stack of paperwork, I-9s and all that bullshit. And I've had a lot of jobs, so I just start filling the paperwork out. I know how to fill paperwork out, and I get it done. I put it back in order into my little new hire onboarding packet. And, then I'm with a bunch of, we'll say, blue collar guys who are struggling to figure out, what these things are. They don't, they don't have all these things that happen. And the lady, is great. The HR, she's dealt with these guys. She's doing a great job. And so I am listening, but I'm not paying hyper attention, because she's not talking to me. She's talking to those guys. I have completed my packet. And then she goes on to give us the history of the chlorine plant and talk about all of that stuff. And I was like, oh, that was pretty interesting. Anyhow. So I go to work, and then now, because I'm the new guy, I don't get a chair to sit in the break room. I don't know this. And so I sit down in the break room, and one guy's like, that's my chair. And I'm like, which one? This one? Yeah. And I'm not trying to be Billy Badass, nothing like that. I'm like, well, I'm sitting in this chair. Where do I go to get a new chair? And none of them want to help. And I'm like, well, you know where chairs are. You can get a chair, and
Yeah.
he's like trying to like put me in my place. And I'm like, I'm just sitting down. You don't want me to sit down with you guys? That's cool. And I went and I sat outside because, hey, whatever. I'm not trying to cause problems. And then I got called in to see our little team boss guy. And he's like, I heard you had a problem with Ray or whoever the guy was. And I'm like, I didn't have a problem with him. It's just there were not enough chairs in the break room. No one wanted to tell me where I can get a chair. He said that was his chair. And I said it wasn't. I said it was just a chair in the break room. And then I left because I didn't want to cause any problems. And then he's like, well, that guy's been to prison and everything. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care. I mean, it just, I just wanted a chair to sit in. He didn't want me to sit in there with them. So I left. No big deal. But they acted like it was me that was the problem.
Yeah.
And all I wanted to do was sit down during my break like those guys were doing, So we had to do like the whole hierarchy thing. And, and I wasn't trying to cause anybody a conflict, but these things kept happening. And so I got called back into the main office about 10 days into my stay there. And they said, hey, here's the union rep and everything else. You're not really in the union yet officially, but we're going to let you go. It's nothing personal, but you don't fit in here. And I'm like, you just said it wasn't personal, but I don't fit in here. And the lady's like, yeah, well, even like when you onboarded, you didn't really pay attention. And I said, well, I did. I did all my paperwork correctly. I put it back into the packet in the order you wanted it in. I was just done first. And so I sat there and patiently waited while everybody else filled their stuff out. She's like, yeah, you didn't pay attention during my history of the chlorine plant thing. And then I gave her almost verbatim the history of the chlorine plant. And she's like, that's kind of the problem. You're, and she didn't want to say I was too smart for the place because I'm not. I'm just a regular person. But like, this is why you don't fit in. You didn't even pay attention and you know all this stuff about the thing. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to, I can't even work at a chlorine plant, Don, without getting in trouble for just being there. They're going to say I'm some kind of like mad genius. And I'm plenty smart, but I just paid attention. That's all it was. But she didn't think I paid attention. And then when I said I did pay attention, I proved it. She didn't know what to do. So she just said I was too smart for that place, which is crazy. I just want a job.
Yeah. I can relate, man. Like I said, I'm retired, but it was because I was given the opportunity to retire, meaning I had worked for a company for a year, almost to the day, a year. It was literally like 3 days longer than a year. And we got a new plant manager. And 3 weeks after he came aboard, they walked in my office and I knew it was coming. I told HR the day before this that I said, hey, they're fixing to let me go. And she's like, well, nobody said that to me. I don't know why. I literally had taken the plant from one of the worst to above the average in their portfolio. And what it came down to was he didn't really care for me. I wasn't the guy that followed him around, and he wanted somebody that he had worked with before. So 3 weeks after he got there, they came in and let me go. And I knew it was coming because every time I talked to him, he wouldn't interact with me. He didn't want to listen to anything I said. And I mean, I've been here a year, I could probably tell you why you're having some of these issues and what's going on, but you don't want to listen. Yeah. Why am I going to chase you around and beg you to listen to me?
Yeah. Oh man, this is, a common theme. And again, like when I look back, it all makes sense. Like that path wasn't for me. And that's sort of the thing is you're trying to make this path work, but it just doesn't. So again, I'm working at that computer company. It's a little 4-man team with the guy above us. And they make, Jeff, the guy who runs the team. And I've been there the least amount of time, but the other guy wasn't senior like that at all. He was just, the guy they had decided they were going to groom for leadership. And we were supposed to do like this thing where we push people to the internet to buy things, to make it so that, it was easier for the customers. And I would ask my customers, do you want to go to the internet? Do you want to talk to me? I would say to all of them, because, I'm doing my job. And they're like, no, Pete, we like you. That's why we buy things from you. I don't want to, I know how to go to the internet. If I want to get something, I know you guys have an internet thing. I'm not worried about that. And so we were having a meeting and he was like, you guys got to do better at getting, they call it the extranet. You guys got to do better at getting more business through the extranet. And we were like, we're pitching it. It's just our clients are used to dealing with us. This is how we built our book of business. And he's like, other people are talking bad about us, saying that we're not doing the right things. And so I went Army on him, and I said, "Who specifically? Who said that?" And he's like, "Well, people." And I'm like, "No, no, no. Who said it? Because I'm going to go address this right now, face to face with that motherfucker. Who is it?" And he's like, or are you making this up? Because if you're making it up, just say it. But if not, I'm going to go get that ass. I'm going to straighten people out. And he's like, and he's like,
It's
I was, and then, the other thing he did was, whenever we had one of these meetings and he would kind of come at us like that, people are saying this. And again, who? And what did you say? And, asking him, because I'm the leader on this team now, right? Because I'm the only one who knows how to lead these guys, and not because I'm a great leader, but because I've been trained in leadership. I've observed leaders. I've been mentored, and he wouldn't stand up like you. So when you heard that, you thought the thing you should do was to roll over and agree. You didn't go get after it and straighten those guys out and throw at them the good numbers that we have. Sure, we're not perfect. We can work on those things, but you've got to you don't have our back. You rolled right over. What's going on here, Jeff? And he would get so uncomfortable that we stopped having team meetings because, and again, I didn't care about this job. So I was already pretty salty, but I was glad to participate in the team process. I was glad to do what I was told to, do this. I was glad to do all those things, but those things didn't equal a positive outcome. And when you realize that, like, well, the guy who's supposed to lead me can't because he's not trained in how to lead, and he accepts anything that he hears. And what doesn't, like I always needed a boss because of my job who had a giant ass who could get an ass chewing and be like, yeah, this guy chewed in my ass. Who cares? You keep doing what you're doing. I love what you're doing. I never found that guy in the civilian world. Didn't always find him in the Army world either. But that's a real thing. And so guys like us who've been around hard charging people, alphas doing alpha things, we know how to work. We know how to rise up to a challenge. And we also know that if you don't have someone like you, even if you're working with me, Don, and you mess something up, I'm not going to roll over to let somebody bash on you. But like, you want to talk to Don about this, we'll go directly to Don right now and we'll figure this out. But those guys they're uncomfortable with that.
Well, what I've learned is half the people that talk about, being a mentor for leadership are the same people that when things come down that they know the people underneath them's not going to like, they're the first ones to say, well, it's not me that's putting this out, but corporate wants us to do it this way. Instead of saying, this is what we're going to do, this is why we're going to do it, and this is my expectation. Instead, they roll over and they lay back and they say, don't kill me. It's the people above me that are making me do this to you. Well, that's not leadership.
Right. And if you have hard news, you've got to say, I've got hard news. You're not going to like this. You're going to suck it up and you're going to work. Because that's what we're doing right now. And I have way more respect for that.
Me too.
I have way more respect for, hey, Turner, you're not holding up your end of the bargain. You've got to dig in. You've got to find a way. If you need help, let's figure out how to help you. But what you're doing right now isn't working. I never heard that talk, but I certainly got it in the military. It's like, hey, you're not meeting this standard. Raise it up. And it wasn't often, but that's when you're like, oh man, I've really got to toughen up or, whatever it is to get better.
Yep. Yeah. It is, it's a whole different world, man. And, I don't know if it was always that way or if the economy has changed the workforce so much that the military hasn't prepared the people today getting out for these changes, or if it's a generation. I don't know what caused it, but there is a huge gap between soldiering and everyday living.
Is it supposed to be that way?
I don't think, not when we're talking about these basic roots of leadership and dedication and discipline. And, isn't that the same thing that every company is looking for? That's what they tell us they're looking for.
That's what's in every one of them SEAL books.
Yeah. I mean, when they're hiring somebody, do you want somebody dependable, somebody that's disciplined to do the right thing without adult supervision? Do you want somebody that can be a good leader and take care of the people underneath him, motivate them, and give them purpose and direction? I mean, to me, that I just named the ethos of being a soldier, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that the same thing that companies are looking for? Because I don't see it in their current people.
Hmm. Yeah, there's something to be said for that. And there's a thing, my buddy Brad and I talk about this quite often. His last boss, who wasn't the best boss in the world, wanted these guys to read a SEAL leadership book, and they were talking about, like stacking. And I don't remember what the book name was. It doesn't really matter, but they were. Um, there's getting the examples from the SEAL teams and understanding what they do, and also understanding that, hey, pushing your guys past the red line so that they retire at 12 years or they quit being a SEAL, like that's not what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You're not going to infiltrate the conference room in a stacked formation and take out every alive motherfucker there. You're not going to roll grenades in the room. So you've got to figure out when it applies to your organization, and you can't just blanket apply. Look, like in my world, there's a lot of gray area where I'm like, it's legal here. Well, it's not legal in that part of town, but right here, yeah, we're going to do it. There's all kinds of stuff. There's exceptions to all of the rules when you're a counterintelligence agent, because our job doesn't always abide the rules. And so they give us some leeway. Is that the kind of leadership book you want to write? All right, I'll write that book, but you probably shouldn't follow that advice, because counterintelligence agents get in trouble all the time because we run afoul of somebody who's hard down the middle on something, and we're way off in happy land, but we're getting the results, or we didn't get the results and the bet didn't pay off. And it's like, well, you were drunk. And you're like, yeah, I was drunk. Of course I'm drinking all day, and then the command loses their shit because it didn't work out that time. Right. So just take those silly examples, the leadership thing, it is a real thing. Like if you want to lead people, you have to have their respect. I don't know that I ever respected a civilian boss once I was an adult and started working. I saw these guys as potential mentors, but for the most part, I never thought that they were in for me. They are always out for me, or indifferent towards me, one of the two, right? And so if I sensed apathy or conflicting messages, I'm like, I know what to do here, and that's just hunker down and be invisible, because this isn't going my way for whatever reason.
Yeah. The biggest problem is they don't take the things. If they took the core basics of what leadership is taught in the military and just applied those core basics, they would get along so much better. And what I mean by that is, you take care of your employees. You get to know them on a basis of, hey, how's the wife? How's the family? I can tell there's something off. You've been kind of off this week. What's going on? And you focus that leadership into the employee.
Right.
Guess what? Everything else that the company wants is going to come.
Man, that's such a good point.
Your everything else is going to rise up. Your production output is going to be better. The camaraderie between the employees. Hell, one guy might even give you a chair,
Yeah.
And
right.
But you've got to understand that the rest of that stuff is about life-making decisions. Like you just said, we're not going to stack on the boardroom and everybody peel left and right to get into the chairs to talk about our finance budget.
Right. Yeah.
That type of leadership doesn't apply to companies. And that's what you're getting out of these SEAL books.
Yeah.
And now you want me to take that leadership style and apply it to make that all we're talking about is somebody making 10 more widgets.
Yeah.
Well, that guy's not going to die if he doesn't make it.
Right. Yeah, you're applying too much pressure here, Yeah, I remember again, like these examples, are great. You get into the corporate space and what are the stakes? That's another thing too, is I don't know how you fix this for people, but I've been in a head-on collision with an Abrams tank. My level for what's dangerous and scary is not yours, everybody. It's just not. Like, holy shit. I'm saying the words out loud. Head-on collision with the Abrams tank. You're gonna write me up? Oh, you're an adorable little baby.
Yeah.
It's like,
that
look
was
at your
that was the
precious little
same thing
face.
with me. When I looked at it differently, I guess. I don't know. When they let me go, I wasn't even mad. I was
Oh,
mad
sure.
that the person didn't have the self fortitude to give me a reason other than we're just going to go in a different direction. Okay,
Yeah.
whatever. You hurt yourself. You didn't hurt me.
Hmm.
I was going to retire before I took that job. I don't know the reason why I took it was one of my old employees asked me to apply for it. And it was in the town that I was living in. I had no commute that I had to worry about. So
Hmm.
why not? And I took it, got it, did it for a year, and then they let me go. Okay. I had the right plan a year ago. I was going to retire, but you didn't hurt me. But what disgusts me is you're preaching leadership, but yet you can't even give an explanation of what your decision making process was.
Right. Right.
Which tells me
So
he didn't
I'm
have a
left.
reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at best, you're leaving me to guess what it was, and I'm not
Yeah.
going to guess in your favor.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that there's a problem there. That it's an interesting thing when you think about in our world, you can run your shop in a way that you're within a larger organization, working for a larger organization. You may have multiple clients who you're trying to serve, and you can still be a leader within your organization. And for me, I was really, I'll use the words, I was a one-man team because no one knows how to do my job but me, and
Mhm.
I don't need anybody else to do my job. So I had a lot of work to do, but I still led. I led by example. I understood what the commander wanted. I pulled on the rope because the commander's like, "This is the rope. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to pull on this rope." And believe me, I pulled on the rope, and the commanders loved what I did. So I led, even though I was one dude. I was the leader in that organization. And then when I really got into that unit, because I was usually foreign to that unit and maybe just there for a couple of weeks at a time, maybe I come back repeatedly, but I had to inculcate. I had to build trust. And once I built trust, I was the main advisor to the commander. Even if they were foreign, I would become their main advisor because I was good at my job. And that's because I understood how to lead my organization from my position. Doesn't make me the leader, but it makes me a leader. And I helped us to be a better unit, you know, far outside of just my own singular work impact, which was big, but bigger because I was a leader. And all of a sudden now the staff is like, "Hey, Pete, what do you think about this?" Or, "Hey, Pete, we're trying to do that." And now I became an advisor slash leader in an organization that's 1,000 people. And I'm one of the primary people. So you can, and I don't know how you would do this in your role because you're going to tell me, but you can lead from within even without people underneath you. Cause I certainly have done it.
Yeah, I mean, it starts from yourself. You know,
Mm,
when what when I define the word leader, right? What is the definition of a leader? And to me, it's the direct representation of his subordinates.
yeah.
If my subordinate's a piece of shit, well then I'm a piece of shit leader because that
Yeah.
means what I'm teaching and what I'm trying to mold is not working. Now that doesn't mean I'm a bad person or any of that stuff. It just means I'm a shitty leader. And
Yeah.
and that could come from multiple reasons. That could come from lack of life experiences to fall back on when you've got to make decisions. It could come from the fact that you don't understand that it's your responsibility to adjust how you lead to your subordinate, not how your subordinate adjusts the way he learns to meet your needs.
Right.
These are all important things that come from being a leader. They all come from life experiences, and I think that's one of the reasons why, our military does have great leadership skills.
Mm,
Maybe we lack communication skills in as far as trying to translate our life to the new life that we went to, you know. We're not used to doing things a certain way. My biggest thing was I wasn't used to going out of my way and then getting yelled at because they thought I was trying to take their job.
right.
I was
Yeah.
done with the work. I was trying to help you. Take
Yeah.
credit for it. I don't give a shit.
Right, right. There's plenty of things to get credit for. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is it's not always common in the military, but if you are an E7 and you're running a platoon, your E6, your senior E6 is going to step in your spots and be the platoon boss. And that guy's going to point to his E5 and he's going to go, "Hey, you're the squad boss." And someone's always got to step up, and someone's always hurt. Someone's always gone on vacation or gone to a
Yeah.
school. And so there's always opportunities to rise up. And so as a norm, not exclusively, but we worry less about someone trying to take our job and more about, do I build leaders? And if I
Yeah.
do, then I am a leader and I'm gonna get recognized and I'm gonna rise ahead of my peers as well. Because if you can build leaders, well, everybody wants you, except for maybe the civilian.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, let me ask you this, right? If Do you think that these companies um truly hire veterans, the ones that like to splash it all over their webpage, that we, 10% of our force are veterans or whatever? Do
Yeah,
you honestly think that they're hiring those people for their skills, or for government tax deductions and so forth? Because my
yeah,
experience has been, everywhere I've went, they don't give a shit about what I did,
yeah,
or my
yeah.
abilities, or my thought process on leadership.
I am not all that. I don't have a very happy answer here, but no, I don't think it matters. When I left and no longer wanted to do military stuff, and I'd done enough, I was fine. Um, I went to all those places local here in Orange County where I live, and I said I'd like to try to get a job. I don't need a whole lot of help. I have a lot of credentials. And the lady said to me, "How many applications are you going to fill out a week?" And I'm like, "Oh no, no, no. We're talking about applications. No, I'll fill out whatever application I need, but um, I don't get the kind of jobs that you apply for and then get them. I'm talking about professional level jobs because I have professional credentials." And she's like, "Well, how much?" And again, keep in mind, I live in Orange County. "How much do you think you need to make to start?" And I'm like, "Well, we live in Orange County, so I would say something north of $100,000. But if I got to start around 85, I suppose that's what I have to do. But you know, I it should be, since you guys are so good at connecting people to jobs, that you guys can find me something that's appropriate for approximately where I'm at professionally." And she looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, "It is okay to say, Pete, we can't help you. Because if you want to put me in an entry level job, you're not going to be helping me. I
Yeah.
need to make professional money if I'm going to get a job. I'm not, I don't mind backing up. I don't mind having to learn a new thing and getting a running start at something. But if you're telling me I have to start at $32,000, we shouldn't have it." And I had this whole conversation with her, and she could not say, "We probably can't help you." I don't know. Of course we can help you. Because the one thing I really need from you is to introduce me to the people that do the hiring, especially like the CEOs or the bosses. Get me to those people and say, "Hey, he's a great guy. He's not going to be an entry level guy for, he's going to be a higher level guy." If you guys can do that, then leave it up to me. And if I don't swim on my own, then okay. And they could not wrap their heads around that. They wanted me to send them jobs from the internet, and go, "What about this job? What about that job? What about that job?" And then they were going to try to do something. And believe I tried that. I sent them jobs. And again, no interviews are forthcoming. And they said, "Oh, you're shooting too high." And I'm like, "Am I? What part of my resume doesn't line up with this job?" And so it is frustrating because you want a company that wants to hire veterans. And so I applied to a company called PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric. It's the utility for Northern California. And I applied for their veteran liaison job, for lack of a better term. I said, "I can absolutely do this." I had the credentials. I was a veteran. I had degrees. So it's like, all right, I'm pretty qualified for this because I was going to be the person in between veterans and them. And they sent me back an email months later saying I failed to meet the minimum standard for the job. First off, that's not true. Second, that's an insult to a military guy. Like, already your language is like, "You said I can't do 25 push-ups." And I can. I do. You just said I wasn't, and so I wrote an email to the CEO and I said, "Hey, that's what you guys said to me. I don't think it's true. And if it is, I still feel like crap about it, and so they were going to try to talk to me, but for me, the boat had sailed. I'm like, you guys had your chance. And I just didn't even I didn't want to go there in that condition and have them like give me a charity job and be like, look out, there's Pete. Right. Cause I hadn't earned the job, and I didn't want it to be given to me in that way. And so I just bowed out and said, no, I'm not going down that road with you guys.
I kind of wonder if that's not the reason why so many soldiers that are looking for jobs, they don't want to put themselves into something that they just know it is not going to work. Right.
Right.
So what is the alternative? Obviously we never admit that we're going to fail. So we fake it till we make it. And that puts you behind the power curve, because now you're in a position that, hey, I got a job. It wasn't what I did in the military, but I had to fake it to get something, and I'll
Yeah.
figure it once I get there. And I think that's part of what the problem is. It's just, there's no way you talk about it, man. It's like talking Chinese and Japanese. It's close, but it's not the same thing.
Right. Right. Yeah. And if you have your eyes set, I'd love to go work for Facebook. That was one of the targeted companies I had. And so I was trying my best to get in there. And again, I'm a counterintelligence guy, so I can meet people inside there. And I met people, I met veteran liaisons, same thing at LinkedIn. I thought I might try to work in there, and I could meet these people, but man, oh man, were they not motivated. I'm like, I targeted your company. I found you. I got you to talk to me. And now you're out of help. I did all the work. I'm here. At least get me an interview, like, well, I'll put your resume on somebody's desk. No, that's as passive as it gets. What do we got to do? I'll take you out to lunch. Oh, no, I can't do that. What do you mean you can't do that? And so there's a lot of that too, where again, like once you become an employee, you get scared that you're going to jeopardize your job. And I don't want to be unfair to everybody, but folks that are afraid. How many times have I been told, oh, go on the internet, they'll have jobs there? No, they don't. That's why I'm talking to you. And if you can't help, to say, I can't help you. And then I'll say, is it because you're afraid? And then you have to say, yes, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to stick my hand up and say, I know a fantastic person for a job. Or if you don't think I'm fantastic for your company, then say so. Oh, you're not fantastic for my company. You're a wild man. Oh, okay. That I can take. But telling me to go to the internet and look under the job openings thing is like telling me to just say, fuck off. And again, that puts the gun in my mouth.
Well, how many of those jobs that are on the internet have already been filled? But legally they have to post it so everybody can waste their time applying, because I already hired my brother-in-law,
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that performance. Because typically the finger is pointed at the job looker. And this is in all cases, right? Not just military people, where your resume isn't good enough. Is it? Because have you read it? No? Oh, okay. I had a professional resume writer so that nobody could say that to me. And this person gave me a state-of-the-art resume. Maybe it sucks, but that's because everybody thinks everybody else's resume sucks. So it's not that. Like, well, you haven't used the keywords. Oh, great. Okay, what are the keywords then? Tell me what the keywords are so I can put them in my resume if that's the problem. And it's always this thing where the person looking for the job hasn't, figured out. So this is all goes to a story. So I was having some trouble, and I had a friend link me to a military buddy, link me to another military guy. And he's like, he's a podcaster. He's kind of figured it out, and I had been in podcasting longer than this guy, but hey, that's fine. And he had a podcast with the VA. And I'm like, yeah, this is cool. I'm glad that, we're talking. And he's like, first off, your website is from the 1990s. And I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Don't even say that. Like, I know what websites looked like in the 1990s. You might say mine's not the best. Maybe it's not state of the art, but don't say it's from the 1990s, because now you're not credible. And the guy's like, all right, maybe it's not from the 1990s, but I wish you'd update it. Okay, then say that. Say, I need to update it. And so then he's trying to tell me all these ways to get jobs. And I said, okay, cool. Because my radar went off, right? And I'm like, how'd you get this job? And he's like, oh, my wife. She's on the inside with the VA. And she got it all set up for me. And I'm like, oh, I see. So it's not me, it's you, And then the funny thing is I don't know, within a month or so, the VA canceled his contract. And so, so he was in the job market again anyhow. But he had someone on the inside to help him, because the hocus pocus you have to go through to get, like go to USA Jobs. When you go to USA Jobs, you'll find something. Like, yeah, I can find something, but is it even possible for me to get hired? No, because you have to. And look, there are people that do this, and you can take the steps, and you can do all that stuff to get that job. But that's not helping anybody. Like, you're still like, hey, I need help with that. I don't have confidence, because every time I try to go, I don't get talked to. I get ignored. I get told I don't meet the standard. And all I want to do is die when I look for jobs. And this is like an actual thing for me. I stopped looking because it made me want to shoot myself in the face, literally.
I'm going to tell you what I have accepted, right? And it's been like this ever since I got out. I mean, the point I got out of the military, I couldn't find a job. So what did I do? I put my own life in my own hands. And I said, well, if I can't find a job, I'll create one. And I employed myself. Now that I'm retired, I've got a media company that I started myself, and I have just decided and realized that, there's only one person that I can really truly count on. And that is myself. If I'm not willing to support myself and do what I have to do, like you said, be a pirate or whatever you got to do to survive, then how hard are you really working to get a job too? If you weren't even willing to give yourself 100%, then why would you give anybody else 100%?
Yeah. And this gets to the heart of that thing where they need to teach veterans entrepreneurship at a higher rate. Yeah. So we can walk out of there and not go, I know the SBA is a resource for something, but like, who wants to be in the entrepreneur track? Let's start you a year early and get going and help, like, we could do that, but we don't. And so you got all these guys like, I'm going to go, no, nothing wrong with this job, but I'm going to go work for Tucson PD because everybody thinks I'm just going to be a cop, or I'm going to guard. How many times have I been told you should go guard something? Can't you be a guard? Like, I'm a counterintelligence agent. Yeah, I can go guard something. I can also infiltrate something. I can also do all kinds of things, Yeah, this goes back to your company thing. No, I don't think companies understand. And I kind of cut you off, but Google does this. Google, the search engine, not the company. Hilton did this. So, like, put your job code, 97 Bravo in my case, in there, and we'll tell you what jobs are open that apply to your field. No, you're not. You're not going to do that. There's no way. There's no way. And my job is complex, so that's probably not fair. But it told me crazy stuff. And I'm like, no, that's not even close to being accurate. But thanks for trying. But have you ever tried those things when they try to port your job code? Yeah. Was it at all accurate for you?
I mean, for mine, it was much easier because I was a mechanic. So it ain't hard for them to say you can work for a dealership, you can work for Oshkosh, find out what the mean average is, and this is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Where I have the problems is, let me ask you this: why is it that an officer can get out, right? And let's say that officer is a captain.
Yeah.
He did his 6 years in the military, got out, and starts out in the management world.
Okay.
That staff sergeant gets out, spent 12 years in, 13 years in, has a degree as well.
Right.
And starts out in the labor force or as just a basic supervisor.
If that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where I've always wondered, right? How in tune is anybody really to the military? Because even USAA does this. USAA, if you're an officer, when you graduate from school and you get commissioned, you're eligible for a loan up to $27,000 at like a hardly any interest at all. Right. And it's designed because, they need to get established, and they're supposed to have a higher class and a higher standard. So they want you to have some money to be able to do that. They don't do that for enlisted.
No.
You have to qualify. And when I look at that, and then I look at what position is a general going to be when he retires
Oh,
compared to a sergeant major,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It's crazy. Tell us a little bit more about your media company so we can make sure we plug that, and then let's dive back into the music side of things
Okay.
before we wrap this up. And thanks for going on this journey with me. I know it's a little bit like we're bitching, but this is a problem that still exists. And I think a lot of people who aren't military people also have the similar problem where they get called every time the company has to get smaller, and you just never get a chance to rise above your position because you're just trapped in this completely unsatisfying world with tons of stress and very little payoff. The next time I talk to someone who works in corporate America and I ask them, what do you think your boss's 5-year plan is for you? And they go, not going to be the first, the last time,
Yeah.
because these folks don't. And I remind people, they don't care about you.
No.
Every time someone walks out with a cardboard box in their hand, guarded by 2 dudes, and nobody told anybody that person was going to get their head chopped, think they care about you? They don't care about you.
Yep.
And I don't want to be cynical, but that's just a fact. They purposely don't tell you, no, we're all family. It says it on the wall. You're like, are we family? Because you just killed Dave.
Well, like I just said at the place I worked, the
Yeah.
head of HR, I told
Didn't
them I was getting fired the day before I got fired, and
Yeah.
she claimed that she didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe she didn't. Maybe she did. She has to live with that, not me. That's
Right.
a you problem, not a me problem.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if I knew it, you got to tell me that other people knew it too.
Right. Right.
So,
And you went all this work and effort and money to hire me. That's the best you guys did?
yeah.
All right. Yeah. So let's talk about your media company.
So I started a media company out of necessity. It wasn't about the money. I needed a tax paying company to handle some of the stuff that my nonprofit can't handle without jeopardizing their nonprofit status. When I got into the music industry, I didn't know what I was doing, right? I'm not musically talented. I just seen a problem that our veterans were starting careers 30 years, 20 years behind their competition. And they were not desired by these top label companies because the longevity of their career has already been spent in the military.
Right.
And so when I started this, I thought it would be sponsored and funded through advertising on the radio station, right? All these companies are trying to take some soldier money. I figured I could just sell advertisement space. Well, what I didn't know was selling advertisement space has to be done as a taxable event. And if I sell more advertising space than I take in volunteer donations, then I will lose the nonprofit status. So I started Barracks Media Company to handle advertising, where they could sell individual spots, and I could control how much money we made off of advertising without jeopardizing the company. And so that was one. That was where it started at. Where it ended was another problem. How many people out there, I've had several on my show, and you probably have too, that has said that, podcasting has helped them, whether it be therapy by telling their story or connected them in some way or whatever. And the biggest killer for our people that are podcasting is 1, over expectation, and 2, funding. Those are the 2 biggest things. They took a topic that they thought was going to make them Joe Rogan in a month, and then they realized that they're spending money and not making no money. And those 2 things will end up podcasting in a heartbeat. Yep.
Yeah.
So what I did was I started hosting, no different than, Bean Sprout or Spotify or Anchor or any of these other companies. And I took and set 30% of all of the hosting profits aside, and that is all split between the podcasters. So if there's, let's say, just to keep it easy, if there's 10 podcasters and one person has 70% of the downloads for that month, they get 70% of that 30% of the profits, right? Then the rest is split and so forth, all the way down to the guy that got 0%, you know. But they all make something. Obviously, you're not going to get rich from it. You're not going to become a millionaire, but it might cover your subscription costs, maybe some software purchases, a new mic here and there, whatever, right? And if that little bit can help you keep podcasting and keep telling your story, you know, then it's a win-win. You know, Podmatch does that same thing. They, you know, if you host somebody, you make a little bit of profit from that host, that guest that you brought on. Well, you're not going to get rich from doing it, but it covers some of these costs, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where Barracks Media came from, was out of those two necessities. At the same time, I offer editing services, you know, AI, if you want voice creations, or I do AI DJs. I build AI DJs for different radio stations. All of these types of things, because I was doing them for myself already. And so I added those services on there as well. But that's what Barracks Media is. And the website, if anybody wants to learn more, it's barracksmedia.com.
I think I've put that here in the thread here. Let's see here. Yep, there it is, right down below. Yeah, no, these ideas, and I'll just hype, and no money in this for me, just respect for the product. Podmatch for sure. If you hustle, you can cover your cost, maybe a tiny bit more, maybe, probably not. And if you hustle beyond that, there's tons of resources on there to improve your game.
Oh yeah.
To connect to incredible people. And so there's a mountain of value, and you can absolutely accelerate your podcast by being in there. And there's a lot of people that just want the same thing as you, is to be successful. And so definitely recommend Podmatch to anybody, whether you're like, one of the things, a lot of the companies are focused on getting you started at a podcast. But if you're mid-career, you're like, how do I, you know, put some energy into my show? Podmatch can do that. You can get in there and you can contribute, like the things that I know. I'm when I get done with this, I'm going to record a video for their little TED Talk like series on how to do a remote shooting, you know, because like we talked about before, like you got to be portable, mobile, and deployable. And so I'm going to show, you know, these podcast folks how to do that. And so Podmatch is a great service. Anything else you want to cover before we wrap this up? And thanks, man, for coming on the show. I appreciate us hanging out. Kind of a mellow, I'm a little bit tired, so kind of just a mellow BS session, but you know, that stuff's good.
You know, the other thing is if anybody out there is interested, check out Veteran Voice Radio. We could use all the help that we can get. If you, all the way down to just downloading our app, in veteranvoiceradio.com, you can go there, /download. It'll take you where you can find whatever Play Store. The apps are free. There's no account sign up. I don't need your email or any of that stuff. You just download it and hit play. You know, even a listener base helps us. You can donate. We are a 501c3, so it is a tax deductible event. If you're looking for a place to donate, the proceeds go to, we're trying to build what's called the VVMAs, the Veteran Voice Music Awards. It's going to be real similar to the Miss America Veteran Pageant. It'll raise money for a different veteran nonprofit each year. And at the same time, it'll make you notice some of these bands that you don't know that have got amazing stories that they're singing about and using music as therapy. So the proceeds go to a great project. None of us get paid. 100% of what you donate goes to the events and to running the nonprofit.
Love it. Everybody get out there and support Don. He's got all kinds of stuff there. You can just go to his name, donalddunn.com, and just go help out. This is how you can make a difference. And if you do need help and you're a veteran, for sure, reach out to me, Pete at breakitdownshow.com, or you can grab Don on Podmatch is easy, but you can go and get his information from his websites. Everybody, thank you all so much. That's 2 shows today, everybody, because we work hard around here. Don, thank you so much for having me on your show. Thank you for coming on mine. I'll talk to you in a second. Everybody else, I'll see you tomorrow.